Welcome. Welcome to another Poetry Flash reading series virtual event. And delighted to have you here. And we're really looking forward to our two wonderful poets tonight. I want to tell you quickly that the books of Tobey Hiller, Crow Mind, and A Modern Herbal, Amy Glynn. You can purchase these books by going to the chat box, and you will see a link there for bookshop.org that Mo's Books has set up for us. If you scroll down, you'll see the covers of the books, these covers, and you can purchase it through that link. And you can also sign up for future notifications of future Poetry Flash events through the email blast sign up link that's in the chat box. So I'm going to hand you over now to Associate Editor Richard Silberg.
Hi, here I am settling like a snowflake into my chair here. We've got two readers tonight whose books are, I guess if we're going to link them, they are a poet speaking to the natural world. That's semi-adequate way to link the two books. Amy Glynn is going to read first. She's going to be reading from her new book, which is forthcoming in 2021, is it? Or
yes, it's the end of this year. Soon.
It'll be forthcoming soon, and that is Romance Language. And it's really a pretty vast canvas she's writing on. Now, let me give you a quick idea. She's speaking, the poet, the speaker, is extremely witty, sometimes even snarky, sometimes pretty vernacular. Let me give you a quick idea, just to give you a sense of the voice that's going to be tweaking your ears here. Here's a poem beginning, it's called Punta Mito, which begins, a grain of sand contains a million trillion atoms. And she says a little bit lower, this is how we speak to one another at the end, oscillating from a kind of epic, horseshit, pseudo-mystic reliance on theoretical physics, airy texts on entanglement and bilocation and duality, to a chill courtesy in which we are always hideously happy. Amy, I hope you weren't, the poem has got a lot more to go in it anyway. But that gives you one sense of a voice. And then here in a poem a little bit later, this same speaker says, but there's such a thing as fruitless work we do because we are ordained to it. So here I am, domestic goddess, ace birder, nectar sommelier, certified naturalist, and by the way, no slouch in the bedroom. So that gives you just a sense of this voice talking. There's really extreme skill here, both wit and just poetic skill. Probably the majority of these poems are in some sort of closed form, maybe a sonnet, maybe stanzas in fixed rhyming sequences. And it's really a poet talking alone but sometimes talking to a you, and you can tell from that little amorous clip here, the you may be a sequential lover, but that's the basic setup for a really complex, beautiful poem. So a book of poems. So let's give her a warm welcome, Amy Glynn.
Thank you. Is my audio okay still? Yeah, okay, good.
Yes.
Cool. So yeah, I'm gonna read from this book is, in as far as I'm aware, forthcoming soon, any old minute. November or so. Um, so I wanted to give you a little bit of a setup. I'm people who know me know I have a, kind of an ongoing obsession with James Merrill, and the kind of organizing principle for this book was a passage that has been kind of obsessing me since my teens, from The Changing Light at Sandover. And I'm going to go ahead and read it. It's the sort of master epigraph to the book, and it sort of sets up the structure of it. And since the whole book is kind of a meditation on structure, I feel like I'm going to just give him the floor for a second. But it goes like this. Oh, and excuse me, if you don't know The Changing Light at Sandover, it's an epic that he claimed was dictated to him via a Ouija board. And in this, the spirits from the beyond have tasked him with writing, quote, poems of science, and he is bemoaning this. He goes, open a biophysic chemical textbook. The simplest term elicits pity and dread, self-pity for the maze of meanings to be stumbled through blindfolded, dread of substances, forms, and behavior so old, original, so radically open yet impervious to change that no art, however fantastic or concrete, more than dreams of imitating them. Slowly, the shock wears off. Polarities make themselves felt upon the page. Opaque words like quarks or mitochondria aren't words at all in the Rilkean sense of house, dog, tree. Translucent, half-effaced, monosyllabic bezoars already found in the gullet of a 2-year-old. Whereas through wave, ring, bond, through spectral lines and resonances blows a breath of life, lifting the pleated garment. The day will come. The day is never gone. Proton and neutron under a plane tree by the stream repeat their ecologue, orbited by twinkling flocks. And on the dimmest shore of consciousness, polypeptides, in primeval thrall to what new moon, I wonder, rise and fall. So that idea of grabbing onto words that have multiple vernacular meanings, it's always been a thing that he and I kind of geeked out on in common. So I have my own little buzzwords that resonate throughout this thing. They're different ones. They're sound, leaves, line, craft, spirits, craft spirits. God, is anyone thirsty? Just to kind of like, there are disintegrated forms, there are meditations on architecture and sculpture and things like that. And I'll play with it a little bit. And I'm gonna be that girl. Out of the gate, we're gonna since I opened with James Merrill, I'm going to read this poem that I wrote in the cemetery where he is buried. And it is a sestina, and I'm going to do it. I'm sorry, but I'm going to do it because it kind of establishes this thing I'm talking about with the sort of weird puns and double entendres. Okay. And this is mysteriously titled October 2012. Now every cell wall paints itself with flame. Water Street's ginkgos go to sulfur. Shades of burnt orange claim the beaches, the late light acting as an accelerant. The sound is offering its ghost notes up as well. Gongs, restive boats. Everything else is leaves. Chlorophyll gets costly, so the leaves discard it, bearing arteries of flame and bronze. I'd like to tell you all is well here, that the bony twigs that tap those shades message me all night long, meeting out sound like small hours text pings, substantively light, though dazzlingly composed. But you are light years from me now, a ghost who rustles leaves and rattles glassware. Light pools on the sound, clouds edged in a mystic fire like the flame in a sunstone. We must not forget our shades. It's blinding out. Let's get blind. Leaving well enough alone is not what we do well. Uncork the spirits. Nothing's brought to light, but this is what we have instead of shades who bring field notes from asphodel on leaves torn from a maple bursting into flame in a cemetery where the only sound is a spiky hail of conkers. Let them sound off as they will, hallow the ground with well-worn sermons on detachment. Here, old flame, watch this limb on which gregarious sparrows light en masse, so thick they almost look like leaves. They leave as if blown by gusts, till nothing shades this place or hides us from each other. Shades will always follow us, however sound our plans, our places. You're what never leaves me, and vice versa. Phototropins well and wane in concert with the slanting light, bartering greenness for a heart of flame year after year. Rake up the leaves, then light the pile and watch the spreading flame and sound what depths you can. I'm doing that as well. All right. And then I'm going to pivot to the other half of the year. This is called Entre deux Mers, June. Every rangy sidewalk crack hollyhock in Bordeaux says the same damned thing. Depend on nothing. Nothing to shore you up, nothing to nourish or validate, nothing. They rise up against half the doorways in town, coming out of nowhere, staying local, dressed up anyway, posing before the stone walls like florid hookers, 6 feet tall or more, veins displayed, stems clad in starry hairs, flexed petals powdered with pollen as if to make a point of how privation shouldn't stop you. They say to stand your ground and take it. Take neglect, turn it to your advantage, build a little empire of your own with it. Turn it to pith and pigment, frill and flush, flashy colors that look ridiculously expensive, topaz and jet, cochineal, Tyrian purple. Turn it to wantonly arrogant, dry fruits, not in the business of attracting anything, because screw that. Take nothing, own nothing, come out on top, present your proof of concept ahead of schedule and under budget, live on your own terms like that. And there's nothing anyone can do. Though they will want to, because once you need nothing, you will scare people, you will make them want to cut you. But here's the thing. Being hollow doesn't really make you stronger, but it does make you harder to bend. And a structure built on nothing is near impossible to bring down. So in counterpoint to my actual literal sestina, I'm going to read something that began life as one and is now kind of a disintegrated sestina, which I like better because no, it's a horrible form. I mean, we can all agree on that. But this is about being ghosted by a lawyer in this case. It might explain a little bit of the vernacular. I'm like the poet laureate of the ghosted, by the way. I think it's like a appointment for life, and I don't think I'm cool. I'd like to be emeritus. If anyone's got any tips, you can chat bar me. But this takes its title from an old pop song from the 40s that my grandfather was obsessed with. It was by the Ink Spots. It's called Ring Telephone Ring. If anybody knows it, I'm lonesome tonight. Ring telephone ring. You know, that kind of like, you can hear the kind of popping on the vinyl. Yeah. Okay. So this is also called Ring Telephone Ring, 21st century style. For the record, even a monastic cell is networked. One deft hand connects the text to the next hand, steadied by another hand that holds a sleeve back from marring the brilliant ink that lights the margins. Even the chanting voice's low bass buzz is unison. Even the silent sequences of prayer are shared. As a point of order counselor, plain chant hums through beehives at 247 hertz precisely, on and never varied or stopping. Workers arrayed in staid lines tending each wax-capped hexagon, the mass devotional thrum of industrious wings. Even an opportunistic forager knows the collective is a necessity. Two things might feel pulled to occupy the same space. A chemical enmeshment, spin-spin coupling on signal splitting, eclipsing binary stars so dedicated to a common center of mass, they look like a single star. What I need you to know is that I'm right where I said I would be. You are 2 hours late, and I got us a really nice suite. There are documents, timestamps, songs, especially songs, that can put you in some impregnable, gloomy cell. You could call it the records room. And you're there on your knees, dropping the diamond shard onto couplings and transits and wrongs, scraping them from a spiral turned gyrewise in vinyl. Spin, spin. Let me say for the record, I was wrongly convicted. And from this joint, only you can spring me. Can I have my phone call, please? This is my Google Translate Latin interlude. This is called Ligabis Notum, which is, roughly tie the knot. After the diamond knot, the high point hitch. It can be performed in churches. Nota bene, it will tighten with added weight. After the anchor bend, there's the tensionless hitch and then the half knot spiral. After the common whipping, the blood knot. After the surgeon's ligature, the grief knot. After the angler's loop, there's the constrictor. After the unknot, there's the bottle sling and the underwriter's knot, both of which provide strain relief. After the underhand knot and the overhand noose comes the ring knot. After that, you move on to the reef knot. And after that, the thief knot, always useful for knowing if someone has gone through your private things. There are all kinds of bitter end knots and racking turns and slips and lashings and things that are capsized despite all due skill with the line. You can learn how to work any kind of hitch, friction hitch, rolling hitch, slippery hitch. You can master open loops, understand standing and working ends. In the end, there is always a disconnect waiting to happen. I got into a list of knots one day, and I was just so thrilled with the vernacular that they use. I find it hilarious. They're so rife. One of the things, a lot of the poems in this book are based around a 2-week stint I had in Rome with a summer school cohort out of UW. And it was a very surreal couple of weeks for a bunch of reasons. But among other things, I decided it was time to confront my disdain or fear or whatever it is that I have around ekphrastic poetry. I've always found it difficult. So I charged myself with writing a bunch of it. And I am going to read a quick series of 3 poems that I wrote about Bernini sculptures that are at the Villa Borghese. It was the first time I'd ever been in there, and I just found it staggering. So the first one is Apollo and Daphne. And it goes like this. The block yields up the girl, just as he'd hoped, dead pale, appalled, rooted to the spot. Turn. Then there's him, the stricken god, in hot pursuit of a quarry elegantly troped in metamorphic rock. Turn. Non-foliation curves smoothly into foliage, carved so thin it actually filters light, as if within its protolith, not just marble, but the fruition of the whole drama were already there. His ardor, her refusal, and the flash of sudden awareness, this chase, this mad dash can have no victor. Turn. Her flying hair a glancing sting, her final backward glance somehow at once defiant and blank, his hands seeking skin, touching bark, stalemate, turn. She stands, arms lifted, leafing, pièce de résistance. Passion transforms, and not even a god comes out unscathed. Some things simply cannot be gotten over. Arrow to the heart, clean shot. The scent of bay will always leave an odd longing. The scent of bay will also always be most strong in full sun. Turn. The contrapposto twists from stone to girl to tree. Each cut insists we see it's been all locked up all along. And this is the rape of Proserpina. Figura serpentinata. Sure, it's twisted, as all such stories are, but still, it's moving in a way. They're gods. What can you say? Capricious, stony, an abyssal will that cannot ever be resisted. Granted, we build the deities we need, and they're as full of brute impulses as we are. There's no sense to anything otherwise, and really, since we know she's going to eat the stupid fruit, seed by dark garnet seed, where's the fault here? It's more than no means no, war of wills. She can twist in his grip forever. It's still the handbasket in which she'll go to hell. We know if anything's carved in stone, it is the never over plutonic pull to enrich the coffers of spall and schist and transfigured lime below us. She's no different. Die, remineralize, repeat. Though, yes, it's strange to see if you apply enough heat, enough pressure, enough time, how radically a thing can change. This last one is Truth Unveiled by Time, which I believe was a sculpture he was working on when he died. It's unfinished, which I thought was cool. Truth Unveiled by Time. No need to know basis required. Stopped cold, dead tired, blunt axes, X and Y both, from the plinth to the sly half smile, from the one half bared thigh to the other. It is so simple. Bromide carved in stone. No need to elaborate. It's all being said all the time. Let time crawl or fly. Like the marble veil it would be tearing from her pale torso, except Bernini failed to finish that part. Still, the wall of stone silk fills like a sail in permanent wind, free fall, frozen solid. Yeah, in suspension, but of course unfinished business is a given no matter how we're driven to make the most of what we're handed. May we too be cut due slack when it all comes undone for once and all. Forgiven. Oops, there we go. I think I am going to read the slightly longer poem that Richard referenced in my introduction. The other thing besides ekphrastic poems that I've always had trouble with are persona poems. I've just always been like from them. So I, again, was like, no, that means you have to do one. My kind of metaphorical, mythological creature of choice is Calypso. I just really relate to her. So this is Field Guide to the Birds of Ogygia. Everything here is rhetorical. Even the sky, which at dusk cannot help but compare itself to a fire opal, a field of gaudy flame that spreads to the breakers in a fit of chiasmus. I've been left to my own devices for ages. A good loom and a lyre and a watery soprano voice like a windward-facing waterfall, all spray and prism. We're all prisoners here. Best make the best of it. Develop a hobby, elaborate patterns. Birds do it all day long. And most days are long at this latitude, which is good for the grapes and the flax and the birds. So many birds, vast shifting rafts of improbable names, laughing tern, godwit, duck, chat, little stint. Even they, no, particularly they, seem to be figurative, like living flights of semantic fancy. The gregarious must learn their obligati. Those consigned to solitude sing songs that seem inborn. Everyone has a bias. Over time, they braid themselves together, one long line crossing the next, until a tapestry telling a tale with a multi-POV narrative makes sense of all the noise. The icterids who cling sidewise to the reeds with their small, sharp feet have a native tongue, half flute, half jigsaw, eerie tremolando trills born in the syrinx that then travel to the mind. Their culture is mainly preoccupied with itself. By contrast, starling murmurations are polyglottic and compose exuberant symphonic poems, a polyphony sampling the screams of hawks, the hoarse complaints of terns. Even the frogs inspire them, and the creaking of the cedars in high winds. There is a blue rock thrush who visits now and then, flaunting a plumage that takes cues from the sea itself. Its color structural, like the sea as well, wave interference. I have noticed that the most amazing songs are often made by those who live alone. It makes sense. Honestly, sometimes I think the gods send misery because they want to hear more songs. I will be writing them for you forever, by the way, after the end of your little stint, your temporary stay. This island is a stopping place for many, a home for relatively few. And yet, beautiful is still a mandate here, and it takes all-day precision and a kind of ruthless competence I guess I have. It is exhausting. But there's such a thing as fruitless work we do because we are ordained to it. So here I am, domestic goddess, ace birder, nectar sommelier, certified naturalist, and by the way, no slouch in the bedroom. And for what, I wonder? Nonetheless, one works with what one has, training vines in a basket shape that's borrowed from weaver birds and spinning spider silk into fabric for a dress dyed with the shells of spiny whelks to match the lingering, whiny finale of the sunset. I'll wear it for you, though I know you won't come back, despite which I expect I will, in a certain rose gold light, still scan the east forever, just in case. The skies will fill with clouds of rasping gulls and sociable lapwings. Hey, I did what I could. I made you safe, never forced you to talk, your bed was kept warm, and the wine had a pleasing calcareous backbone. Think of that when you're lashed to the mast and the shanties commence. I'm going to read two more. One is sort of the companion piece to that Puntamita poem that Richard referenced. This is its southern cousin, Tierra del Fuego. Any Coleridge imagery that is going on in your head is yes, on purpose. All right. When it's all gone south for good, I'd have you recall you knew all along it was going to go down that way. And you boarded this bark on your own ridiculous dime. You will say you're more comfortable in motion. You'll say penguins when you mean pelicans. If the mezcal becomes too seductive, who knows? Perhaps when it's time to call it. You will find the empty miles calming. Perhaps you'll start to see things, snakes, for instance, twisting their lustrous bodies in the wake of your craft, and understand it sometimes takes distance to know what you love. That what reconciles you to love even cold-blooded things for their own sake is self-abnegation and miles and movement. So move. But remember your shades. The sun on the ice can burn the sclera, which hurts. And you're already far from San Blas, which hurts. But you've learned this is not about us if you've learned anything. And of course, there's no return trip. So keep in mind, should you be at a loss, how proximity can obscure things too. You're clever. You know the primary phenomenon is clarity. Every cryptic facet and flaw and inclusion aflame with the truths of natural law. The diamond you'd bought her, the gilded glaciers, on and on. The crack in the pattern will ever only be the radiant of the spark. The distal rim of the world is a field of infinite fire. You will find things to love in that stark brilliance, things you at least believe you love. The luciferin scrim of the austral auroras, the way the penguin's wings become flippers. How clear the sky is and how still the water. Please remember who you are. At a certain point, all thought must manifest as growth. Cosmic attraction is expressed in crystals, and as much as we've been trained to fight it, all the relevance is drained from despair over time. You'll make a fist in the air at the crux, and your thumb will point south. But you already know that too. This is analogical vision at which you have always excelled. You are bound for porvenir, which you also know. Hereafter, there are no calms, but a gold rush every sundown. Watch it ebb and think of us, because I fear nothing's ever as solid as we would like it to be. And I'd have you remember the snow, the way it swirled around us in mercury vapor light at the shore of a lake once. Don't lose your jacket. Despite what you're sure of, all you've been told the South and of getting free, I must warn you, it's cold at the bottom of the world. And I just feel like that got really far away from home, so I'm going to take it back to the local area. I think probably most, but not all people here are tuning in from Northern California, but for anyone who has not experienced the Glass Beach in Fort Bragg, I'm fascinated by this place. My kids and I have been known to make a day trip just to go there. Mendocino that's an 8 hours driving day trip, by the way. It's just, yeah, it's a lot. But this cove is like 2 feet deep in glass, there's, instead of sand, it's just this mosaic of sea glass, and it's decades of garbage dumping have just turned into this incredible jewel. It's, it's stunning. And the first time I took my kids there, I heard there was a little conversation between these 2 young women, one clearly a local and one clearly a visitor. And the one that was visiting was saying, "Oh, it's amazing. It's amazing. This is, wow, it's beautiful." And the other young woman said, "Yeah, I know, but people take the glass and eventually they'll take it all and it will be gone." And I was like, "Isn't that a cleanup?" But it's funny, the whole trash to treasure transit it's full of ironies. Anyway, this is called Glass Beach, Fort Bragg. And before I forget and mute myself at the end of this, I just wanted to say this is lovely and wonderful, and I'm really happy to be here. And big thanks to Poetry Flash and to Joyce and Richard and to Toby. All right, Glass Beach, Fort Bragg. Afterward, the roiled detritus washes up for days, shifting, but always stuck in the rack zones back and forth. No one owns it, and no one can really take it away. It has foiled all remediation efforts, and it always will. But it does change. Small things accrue meaning in their accumulation. Sharp things do lose edge to agitation. And afterward, the tide recedes across a field of silicate and calcium and vitreous aggregate. It is the sum total of everything we will ever break, jettison, discard. I admit it, I still fail at being happy enough, though I know what the litter becomes when the tide's been at it. When it's washed and sunlit, the wreckage can seem like treasure. Thrust a hand in, pull it back bleeding, fistful of sea glass and something sharp you weren't expecting. I don't want to sift through all that anymore. It's all just words. And after words, empty shells, even the birds know better than to linger over. They were liars. Whoever said a long memory was a gift. Thank you very much.
Okay, that was Amy Glynn.
Louder. You louder.
Louder?
Your voice.
Okay, that was Amy Glynn, and I hope people will go out and get her beautiful new book. A Modern Herbal is no slouch of a book either, but the new one is a big book, I think. Okay, our next reader is Tobey Hiller, and this book is dedicated to Don Schenker. And looking at the dates, I see he died so incredibly long ago in 1993. Makes me sad to think how few people probably remember his humor and his wisdom. So if people out there in Zoom land, if you knew Don, let's have a deep moment for him. Okay, now Tobey is a woman of letters. She's got 3 previous books of poems. She's got a novel, Charlie's Exit, that is on my bookshelf and well read. And here in this book, Crow Mind, Tobey is addressing that brilliant midnight ruffian, the Crow. And the book establishes a relation with Crow and his mate, I guess basically through the water basin that she fills for them, and that Crow imperiously expects her to I think he wants you to use that snaky tool water thing, hop to it, fill it up. Now, as she's writing these poems, I think this is not my imagination. I think Tobey has got a little bit of Crow in her. And the poems, many of them are written in very short line, and they suggest to me the kind of beady, quick movement of a crow, the quick, darting, pecking quickness of Crow. And, as she observes these birds, you'll hear the evolution of her relationship with them. But she's seeing Crow and people in certain ways, as relating in certain ways. Like Tobey, I'm just going to be very brief. I'm not going to steal your thunder here, but she says he uses tools, he washes his food, he lives everywhere, his flock increases. He's smart like us, a murder of crows, we call it. And then a little bit later, just comparing the behavior of humans and crows, she says, we both do what we want, but I, with my hope and so-called moral sense, do it anyway. So, that's a little sense of she talks about how brilliant these birds are, how they use tools, but you'll hear all about them. Let's bring Tobey on and let her hop and skip and read.
Thank you very much, Richard. It's so nice to hear your introduction, and thank you to Amy. I really enjoyed those poems. They're wide and deep and full of gems, so it was very enjoyable. And thank you, Joyce, too, for putting this together. It's a big job. what I'm going to do today is read poems from Crow Mind, and then I will read 3 poems that are more recent and of a different type. Richard is right. The crows kind of spoke to me in a certain voice, and so the book, all the poems in the book took a certain form, variable lines, sometimes very short lines, and the other way that came about is actually via Don Schenker, whom he mentioned, who was an early poetic friend of mine and a great poet. Don had a way of a style that was extremely variable, and some of his poems were very casual in tone, and this book kind of came out like that. So the first poem I'm going to read is actually the poem that introduces the book, and it's to Don. And I really urge you, if you can find some of his books, to take a look at them. He's a really fine poet, sort of underknown. This is called Mind Floats Up. Mind floats up above the eggs and toast. Bees work the lavender. Crow calls. Thought flits, testy, then gathers, 4 foot down to something I've forgotten now. Wind, feathers, sunbright leaves. Crow and me, as Don would say, we start the day. The next one is called Crow Wipes His Beak. Mr. Crow, it mentions Sweeney, which is, if you're familiar with T.S. Eliot, Sweeney, who was a murderer, appears in his poetry, and this poem mentions Sweeney. Mr. Crow wipes his beak. Mr. Crow wipes his trusty beak, this side, that, on the fence, struts with his rolling gait down the fence-top highway, bull-necked Sweeney among no nightingales, looking here, there, surveying his territory, hawk-checking, alert to the shadowed flicker I must make on the window when carefully, all slow molasses, I move to keep him in sight. What flits in his black and burnished mind? What shines in his sight? Crows, like other birds, are descended from dinosaurs, and they have a certain reptilian quality, which, look at their feet, look at their beaks, and they fly. They're kind of dinosaur-like. This is called sharp. Sharp of beak and plumage, wing points prod air, tripartite claws swing, a dinosaur swagger. Blues Brothers shoulders, wit as wide as wild. Crows all point and luster. This is not tuxedo or morning garb, not a dancer's thin whiplash darkness, more black cat ink and strut. He knows who goes there, what's what. This is called His Dark Mistress. I mean, there are echoes in these poems too of the poets I've loved. This is an ancient poet I've loved. His dark mistress. She's sleek as tempered steel, black as any midnight thought, empress of the south or ninja, gleams deep shine, a dark more definite than light's absence, shoulders not so broad as his, defers, it seems, to his rough speech, but I imagine her alternate path through day's branched gold and green of observation, arrow of her own. Her unique call he learns and yearns for when uncalled for silence erupts in Cawdor Castle. With it, he names her, calls her, where's wide call, call. At the water, she takes second sips. He bounces over her, short umbrella hop, waits, watches surrounding air, trees, any flick shadow of interlope arrival, as she drinks. When a crow the flock knows dies, they gather, they make noise, cacophony. One in captivity fell silent 4 days when his mate died. Crows mate for life. It appears they have friends with benefits also, but they mate for life and they are quite family oriented. The young fledgling crows, when they get big enough, often stay at home and help the mating pair feed the new fledglings. This one is called His Philosophy. Yesterday, I lost a poem about crow. The second one I wrote, Gone for Good. Looking, finding, management and miss, order, chaos, regret, revenge, and unsubstantiation of materia, evanescence, memories, many treacheries, not to mention language. Well, we'll stay away from Wittgenstein, whom I am not competent to parse. Hume's more like it when it comes to crow. Sensation, idea, a clear line between what comes to beak and what arrives in head. This poem I lost, sometimes it's backs of envelopes, scraps of post-it, bits of paper, scribbles on the moment's walls, chit bits stuck in paper haystacks and desk-tied scruffle, easy to lose track, let them lie, go away, forget, or poke them half plucked into unfiled piles, neglected as an unfinished outbuilding blurring under rain. Visitors come, they go, dinner gets cooked, newspapers fold their old news into the trash. Scraps go up in every smoke the day exhales. Combustion and evaporation's the way of things. Crow knows this when he looks at water shrunk to slime. It was such a good one, of course. Crow, if he misses that delectable mouse, bounces up and caws a loud complaint, challenge to the morning's misrule, call to mates to sympathize. But then, like all natural athletes and realists, like Hume or Summer or politicians, he moves on. Regret fills no belly, blue sky calls. This is called The Habits of Crows. Crows have gotten a bad name at various times in their long, long career, which outdates our career, by the way, it's much longer than our career, because they feed on carcasses, including the dead in war zones. And so that really started the medieval habit of depicting crows as harbingers of death. And even during the Black Plague, having people, doctors or quote, medical people who are coming around to help wear big crow masks. The habits of crows. I just found part of a mouse, tail ringed in perfect circles, descending in size to the minute, and feet long toes pointed uselessly, still attached to a picked away sheath of skin, floating in the water basin Mr. and Mrs. Crow used to wash their food. Usually it's bread or wild onion stalks, but Crow's omnivorous and inventive. He uses tools, he washes his food, he lives everywhere. His flock increases. He's smart, like us. A murder of crows, we call it. This one is called Crow Sees Blue. Crows, actually many birds have a wider range, a wider spectrum they can see than we have. They have more rods and cones in their eyes. So one speculates about what crow may be seeing. Crow sees blue. It took us eons to name blue. Homer called them wine dark seas, dark red or crimson deep. Birds see more spectra than we do. They have more cones. As painters, they would be wilder than Monet. So crow, what he loves, what she sees, must be shelter of many fluttered greens, tranced wing nesting flights of blue, black and silver and mouse gray, beyond our dusk and shadows, with sharpest azure and all its brother sister colors belonging to, and yes, possessing him too. And corvids are all playful. They have watched ravens fly upside down for a quarter of a mile, for no good reason really, but to fly upside down for a quarter of a mile. And play seems to characterize many of the most intelligent creatures. Well, maybe we just all have to find amusement somehow, you know? I read, he plays. While crow or some relative slides down windshields and roofs and hills in the snow, or bites some unsuspecting dog's tail in the park, or chases cats around a courtyard and waddles off, all a cackle, I watch him online, researching the habits of his kind. The way he figures me out is just what I did when I was small. He watches, crows look, notice pattern, think. Today is, tomorrow will be, and then crow tests it. I know this because crow's out there watching me watching. When I was young, I slid down snowbanks too. Slippery's its own reward. Crow knows we're dangerous, and not sometimes. He recognizes faces, counts enemy and friend. If crow were larger than me, I'd watch him like that too. This is one of the poems that Richard read a line from. Somehow crows sometimes remind me of cats, even though cats and crows are enemies. And many crows have been made into pets for a long, long time because they form relationships. They will mimic what you say. They will play with you if you get close enough to them. I've not tried to become that close because I actually don't know that that's a really good thing to do with a wild bird. But Mr. Crow imitates a cat I had. I'm out watering plants. He ambles along the fence, angles sidewise glint of eye and expectation. So, his glance says, so. I speak that much crow. He enlarges. Priorities slipped your mind? Can you count to 6? Breakfast is number 1. My morning necessities, please. Now would be the time to fill that water basin. I know you can use that snaky tool water thing to more purpose. Hop 2. The difference between us, this is another line. This contains another line that Richard read. There are differences, but perhaps not quite as many as the similarities. The difference between us. Though there's a historic drought in California where we live, Crow and I was unable to resist the little pepper plant, the Japanese eggplant, so elegant, edible, and comic all at once, those purple Groucho noses, a squash plant that will splash everywhere, and just a few others, not to mention all the flowers, nodding gorgeous heads I've already planted in my garden, though no one had the milkweed I'd set out to buy to feed the monarch butterflies, who can barely find their archipelago of food now in the orange muscle of their migration south along the de-weeded, insect-toxic cornfields. Crow notices the wild onion has been mowed down. He switches to mice, spiders, purloin bread, the odd blown by night hamburger wrapper. I'll water sparingly. I save runoff from the shower. Resource, survival, think outside the box. Greed, for dinner, for color, for bounce and flurry, the everness of spring. We both do what we want, but I, with my hope and so-called moral sense, do it anyway. This is called Crawdaddy Crow. Crawdaddy Crow sidles sidewise down fence, watching squirrel pump his loud tail. Nuts, are the subject and object, noise, chit-chit and caw, the notice of what will out. Crawdaddy keeps his cool, flaunts his black epaulets, lets wind carry its feather news his way. The strategies, the double deal behind Bark's blank. When Crow was knighted, he did not bow. He noticed that the sword descending truncated grandfather tree. He's good at side effects. He kept his eye on where the nuts fell, watched the telltale flag of squirrel's tail. When he croaked nevermore, this was taken at face value, though Sir Crawdaddy Crow knows nothing happens in heaven or earth that will happen nevermore. This is kind of a poem about gender. Gender in crows, gender perhaps everywhere, who knows. She bathes. They both fly in, drink, flex, peck, jump up on the rock, jockey. She elbows him a bit, keeps jumping down into water, and after the usual while, he flies off. She stays. Gingerly, she steps into the small waters, stands ankle deep, sits, fluffs her feathers, steps out, steps in, glances here, glitters there. Plumply, she settles down, flings water drops off wingtip, shimmies, turns. To me, she seems languorous, taking it long and slow, eros in an interval away from all clutter of nest, food, caw, him. Meticulous beak trims and tidies, she preens wing feathers, plucks and presses. You might say primp, you might say pleasure, you might say self. He flies back and forth transversely a few times, calls. Other crows watch from branches. Maybe they're guarding, maybe they follow tribal rules, but she's alone here in her bath, in her own crow mind, and what she thinks, whether flight or nest or itch, is hers alone. Three more, I think. This one, as I said before, American crows in particular are everywhere now, and part of it is what we provide them, especially in urban environments, in the way of food. And crows are very good at finding and consuming junk food. So if we want to reduce their numbers, what would be good to do is to control the way that we get rid of food and the wastage that we have. How Crow Became Legions, a saga of many stanzas with long slogs between boughs of the slow millennia and sky to tell it to. His tribe likes congregation, finds way to gather plainwise and catch as catch canny, sweeps a wide soar from belt to forest, down to meadow and up to sky, gypsy bursts of clatterblack, minor thieveries and rumors of war till the river's owned. Behind the garbage dump will do just fine, string and bottles, just two of what is underfoot. 4 and 20 will burst out of any pie. He calls it Saga of the Noonday Raven, blackest epic of them all. His eyes worldwide, his heart's as red and pulsing with all the heart's 4 and 20 chariots of desire as yours and mine. Come, brother, come, sister, he says. I will show you how to grow and grow. This is called Last Year's Sorrow. Was it theirs? Last year I found a crow baby, desiccate, half buried in grass, hard by the back garden gate, head thrown impossibly back, wings hardly pinioned. Was it theirs? Crows mate for life and crow babies grow up slow. For 3 or 4 years, they teenage between Zoom and fortune, play fake doom and boom before they settle down to all that family labor. This year, did they send their babies successful into sky? An ancestor of mine, Zilpah Hall, married at 24 in 1804, bore 9 children: Ardelia, Lydia, Alonzo, Ruth, Abigail, Sarah, Rowena, Mary, Fanny. She was always pregnant, bearing, suckling. Excuse me. Alonzo, the boy, died at just over 1 year. I know this, though not how Zilpah wept, binding up her sorrow in silence, bent over the washtub, tears dripping into laundry. I know this because his sister Rowena made a sampler listing her family's names and their dates. At the bottom is a prayer for Alonzo. This is my prayer for the crow baby dead before he fledged, and for his siblings who fly now and argue and bathe and watch me for the hope I bring as water. And next to the last one of the Crow-Mine poems. Ravens and crows and some other corvids too have figured in myths and stories from the dawn of time. First Nations have told a lot of stories about them, and there are a lot of transformation stories about how crow takes other forms and causes natural things to happen. This is called The Sun Burglar, The Brothers of Sleeplessness, Hook, Houdini. Crow has always known how to tell a story, how to burgle Sky Chief, become his daughter's fussy child, fly like a plucked black hair through the smoke hole and seed the unlit sky with stars and moon. How to tell Odin what to think, Hugin, and what to remember, Munin, after the pair circle the whole world while the hammer thrower sleeps. First Nations know he can carve a canoe that will grow a foot to walk right out of drowning waters, survive the scheming uncle, talk dirty to Perdella's kicking foot, and clothed in his cloak of trickeries all the way through any history's epic, transform your car into a nutcracker. Researchers watch crow solve it, use rocks to weight a board till it slants to drop the needed stick, displace water in a beaker with 1 stone, 2, 3, till what he wants floats within reach, bend a hook and using it with string, lift food out of a tube, or in the wild, dig a morsel out of a tree with a forked stick, poke it out of an anthill, or pretend to stash it while another bird watches because thievery's eye comes easily to him. Shaman, trickster, quick study, Mr. Black-eyed Sleek of Smarts still transforms the world we like to call our own. And this last one is called Crow Knows. Crow knows what? He shows a black box fox-like glance to me, dives into sky, the large goodbye of caw and go. The world's a place of high and low, and all that's in between my here, his there. Well, it's a cascade made of star-stuffed legacies, invisible to proof, whose mineral and liquid names I do not know. Let's call it this morning's sweet swing low, the blind man's touch and go. That other sky-high thing we know, all of us under great God's sun, feather-flanked by Mother Rain, named playful when we can by the glide and glad of snow. And if everyone is still able to listen, I'm gonna read 3 other newer poems. That will be the end of it. The first one sort of alludes to all the stuff that's going on now, sort of. It's called, and these are in a different style than the Crow poems. They dictate their own, I find. Not so much, I said to myself. Tomorrow's a rumor, yes, but meanwhile the blue and green mingled, while not so far away, the silence split open. Asphalt dawn, midnight fire. The streets led to everywhere, but nowhere loomed at conversation's edge. But what is all this? How does it work together? Is that a jungle answer? Too many questions make a poem into a pithless tree. Could any poem be a tree? Not likely, unless you could climb it, unless it cast shade, married dirt, unless birds could nest in it, a ladder to, let's say, tomorrow. What stands has muscles, sap, camber, intention of green, of growth's reach. Limbs require light. Some of them burn, and that's not all. It never is. Words are a combustible forest. All answers decompose, but some stretch into song first, shoulder to shoulder. The end's just another skin of time. 10,000 years ago, our species left handprints on cave walls. Memory is the hand printing itself again and again. Leaves curl, go up in smoke, rain down, the ends fray. Gallimaufry, what does that mean? A stew of leftovers, which might be entropy, melt, or tangle. What writes memory? Hand, eye, the jungle brain? Because it's not just the lungs, you know. Are you waiting for the end? Should we have a drink? Two more, they're quite short. This one is sort of from a meditative batch. It's called Clear As. Clear as. Sometimes at dusk, you can see what it is, connects one thing or being to another, or you can tell one piece is not one, many is all one, though yet distinct and painted, clear as shadow, as wind rippled grass, as mist rises, or fox runs, or child, clear as sand sinks beneath your feet, clear as what you hear in silence after song, as itself. And this is the last one. This poem called Small Boat is actually the title poem of my next collection, as yet unpublished. It's called, as I say, Small Boat. Oh, small boat, she said, small boat. Was it prayer? Incantation? Boats must be built near water. If you build them in the mountains, you must find a river. If you build one in the desert, you must harness cloud. Some boats are made of mud. No float will come of that. Some boats are made of muscle, and their timber will last for years until time carves itself toward bone. Some boats are made of wish, but spit and promise can't survive the rapids. All boats are too small for all the cargo, and it's not long before the bailing starts. Some boats can recognize the shore, but then, oh then, you'll need a horse. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I'd like to thank both of you, Tobey Hiller, Amy Glynn, for this beautiful reading. Just what we needed on this full moon evening. And to get their books, they're excellent books. Crow Mind, A Modern Herbal. Go to the bookshop.org link that's in the chat box, and it will scroll down. You'll see the covers of these books, and you can get them there. And keep your eyes peeled for Amy Glynn's Romance Language that'll come out before the end of 2020. And again, can't thank you enough for joining us. Watch Poetry Flash.org for more. We're keeping on. Thank you.